Hello, and welcome to Backstage Buzz at the MAC, where you get the inside story and the art scene right from the directors and creators of the shows, along with events hosted at the MAC. I'm Diana Martinez, and we have another great show lined up for you today. Justin Witte, director and curator of galleries at the College of DuPage, will be here to give us an update on the shows at the Cleve Carney Art Gallery. He'll share a little bit about this fall's hot new exhibit, which is currently on display, Luftwerk's Color Code. Then, Connie Canaday Howard is back to tell us what we can expect from college theater during the fall semester. But first, Dan Bindert, WDCB's Radio Station Manager, is here to give you the scoop on an exciting show coming to the MAC in November. Hi, Dan.
Hey, Diana. Great to be with you.
So good to have you here. Well, I have to give you credit because the show we're going to talk about, Take Me to the River, was really your pick.
That was one that we talked about, and I was so glad to see that you guys had booked it for the MAC, because it looks like a really, really great show.
Well, you know, I go and talk to all these agents, and they say, we've got this, we've got this. I'm like, well, this looks good to me, but what do you think? And Charlie Musselwhite's the headliner of that show, and you knew everything about it.
Sure. Well, it's great because you've got basically three people that are all stars and headliners in their own right that are all a part of this show, and then it has this connection to this great movie that came out a few years ago. I know.
Tell us about the movie.
So the movie, a lot of people remember a film, if you go back about 15 years, there was a movie called Standing in the Shadows of Motown, where it explored all the musicians that helped make the music for the Motown stars. And it was all about the studio in Detroit, all that kind of thing. Well, a few years ago, this is just 2 or 3 years ago, people decided to do a similar thing in Memphis. And so the movie is called Take Me to the River, which is the song title of an Al Green song. Al Green was the great R&B star of the 70s that did Let's Stay Together and all those other great hits. Take Me to the River was one of his big hits. And he recorded it at a studio called High Records, which was this a Memphis record label run by a guy named Willie Mitchell. And in Memphis, you have three in particular of the really great recording studios of American music in in the 20th century. You had Sun Records, where they made all the rockabilly
Elvis, right?
records. Elvis came out of.
That's the Million Dollar Quartet, right? That's that story.
Exactly. So that all came out of Sun Records. And then you had two great studios where they did soul music. And one of them was Royal Studios, which still exists. They still make recordings there. And that was where Al Green made his music for High Records in the 70s. And then there was Stax Records in the 1960s.
Stax.
Sure. So Stax Records, you had Otis Redding, Booker T and the MGs, Sam and Dave, and William Bell, who is one of the stars
of the show that we're getting, right?
Yeah, so this film explored that whole music scene along with some of the musicians that came up in Memphis and had strong ties to Memphis. So you have Charlie Musselwhite, who's a great harmonica player with a strong Chicago tie too, because Charlie Musselwhite grew up in Mississippi, great harmonica player, and grew up his early years in Mississippi, went to Memphis and lived in Memphis for most of his developing years, then came to Chicago as a young man.
Oh, so he got our influence of
got
blues.
Our influence, and that's where he sort of broke through, was when he was in Chicago in the 1960s, when a lot of young white musicians were mixing blues and rock and roll, and it was really becoming a thing. So Charlie Musselwhite got his start there, but an incredible harmonica player, sort of said to have inspired Dan Aykroyd's character of the Blues Brothers, is this guy that sang and played great harmonica. But Charlie Musselwhite, probably 30 albums to his credit, great legendary blues figure. So he's one of the people, was in the movie, is going to be one of the headliners at this show. Then you also have these other two great singers. One is William Bell, who came from Stax Records. And he was not only a singer, he did some of his big hits. He had a song called You Don't Miss Your Water back in the early 60s. It's like a big sort of R&B classic. Had a song called Private Number from the late 60s. Had hits through the 70s. One of his best known songs is a song that he wrote too, because he was a real prolific songwriter. And he wrote the song Born Under a Bad Sign that Albert King did as a blues musician in Memphis, and then Cream, Eric Clapton, did Born Under a Bad Sign in the late 60s, big giant rock hit. That was William Bell's tune.
So the movie is like a documentary of this Stax record and the influence of these musicians in Memphis at that time.
And their connection to Memphis. So you have, on this concert, Charlie Musselwhite, William Bell, who just had a big comeback. So he did these things at Stax, wrote songs, sang tunes, and then he had an album called This Is Where I Live. Just this year, in 2017, Grammy Award winner for his big comeback album. Then Bobby Rush is the third guy in here, and Bobby Rush is this incredible entertainer. He won a Grammy as well this year at the age of 83. First time he ever really won an amazing.
Isn't that amazing?
It is. 83, and he's got the energy of someone you would guess he's like 50 years younger by the way he dances and moves and sings.
Fun.
And he is a blast. I mean, he is one of the most fun blues singers you can see. He's got all this sort of folk language that he weaves into all the, folk wisdom that comes into his songs, along with this real comedic touch, and he blends funk in with blues and soul, and he's a blast. High energy, and just so much fun, and the greatest guy. It's going to be great with all three of these musicians, all headliners in their own right.
And the music is all the music that's featured in the movie.
Exactly. So there's music from the movie, and I'm sure they'll be taking it in some other directions that they want to take it to. But if anyone saw that film, Take Me to the River, they're going to love this.
And you can look up the movie, because we were thinking about showing the movie before the show, or the night before, or the week before, and then I looked it up and I'm like, oh my gosh, you can access it on Netflix, you can access it on different venues. So I thought, let everybody know, check out the movie, right? Before you come, see the movie.
Yeah.
And then you can relate to a little bit more, I think.
But I think it sounds like a great tour, and I'm really excited to see it just as a fan. So I think it's really great that we're going to have this here at the MAC.
Well, it's going so well that when I was out booking shows for next year, in 18-19, the agent told me, people are loving this show so much, they're going to do a sequel to it. And they're going to do another, like, Take Me to the River sort of show, but it's going to be based on Nashville. So they're going to move, what happened in Nashville during that time. Yeah, and find, the stars that did all of that.
Yeah.
We need to talk about one more thing real quick before we wrap it up. And it is, we had a summer show, Lionel Hampton and this big band, that canceled because of transportation and I was going to say a snowstorm, but it was summer, so it was not a snowstorm.
Just airline, one of those things that happens sometimes, where flights get canceled and moved around.
Exactly.
Couldn't make it in for the show.
And we're going to hold true and give everybody a free concert on November 4th.
And this is going to be incredible for people who haven't heard about this one. Maybe some people heard about it over the summer and wanted to come. And for people who haven't, either way, it's going to be great. This is what's called the new Lionel Hampton Big Band. Lionel Hampton was the great vibraphone player. People think of it as a xylophone a lot of times, but vibraphone. So he played from the 1930s all the way up into, I think he died in 2003 or 2004. And even into his last years, still went on the road with this really, really entertaining big band, classic, swing, high energy, fantastic show. And his band, a lot of his old band members have still continued to carry on the tradition, but they've got this ringer as the front man doing Lionel Hampton's part, and that's Jason Marsalis, who's the youngest of the Marsalis family of
Which is a huge name in jazz, right?
Exactly. The extremely talented family, and he's an amazing musician in his own right, Jason Marsalis. So he's the youngest brother of Wheaton and Branford and the people
he's the real deal.
Marsalis. He really is, and he's playing Vibes, Lionel Hampton's instrument, out in front of this band. So we think it's going to be really exciting and a lot of fun, whether people are into old school big band or just great jazz music or just want to see an exciting musical show. I think it's going to be a real good thing.
And it's going to be free.
Yes.
Because we already paid for the show, and we're going to figure out some fun way for people to get tickets through WDCB. We'll be releasing tickets that day through the box office, first come, first serve, starting around 1. But we'll do some fun promotion with WDCB listeners.
I know, we're really excited too to have this, even though we wanted it over the summer and it didn't work. It's going to be so great at the MAC. It's going to,
with even better sound, honestly.
Exactly, and it's such a great place to see music, and I think it's going to be kind of the culmination of our 40-year anniversary year. You know, the MAC had the 30-year anniversary.
That's
the
right.
college had 50. WDCB's been celebrating the 40th, so we're looking at this as sort of the culmination. We're even inviting some of the old WDCB alumni back to attend the show, and it should be a lot of fun.
Dan, thank you so much for
coming
on the show.
Thank you, Diana. Always great to be with you.
So good to have you. You are like an encyclopedia of trivia about music. I love it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Diana.
Take Me to the River Live will be at the MAC on November 5th at 6 p.m. Tickets can be purchased at the Mackinac Art Center box office, online at themac.org, or by calling 630-942-4000. Before October comes to a close, be sure to check out these amazing events. New to the MAC this season is a one-of-a-kind series featuring today's leading explorers, scientists, and photographers. Come see the first of 3 National Geographic Live presentations on Friday, October 20th. It's sure to enlighten and educate. Strangers in a Strange Land follows photographer Jody Cobb's experiences witnessing hidden modern-day slavery. Then, on October 21st and 22nd, join the New Philharmonic Orchestra as they, along with the Northwest Indiana Symphony Chorus and 4 renowned soloists, run through the repertoire of Broadway legends Rodgers and Hammerstein and Andrew Lloyd Webber. There will be 2 performances on Saturday at 3 and 7:30 p.m. and 1 at Sunday at 3 p.m. The Cleve Carney Art Gallery has kicked off its season so strong. The first exhibit of 2017-18 is Leslie Baum's Here Comes the Rainbow. It was named one of New City's top 5 art exhibits in September. And now, hot on the heels of that recognition, is another great exhibit, which was recommended by the Chicago Tribune as a must-see fall show. Here to share more with us is the gallery's curator, Justin Witte. Welcome, Justin.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us about this must-see show.
Well, the show is called Color Code, and it's by the artist group Luftwerk, which is 2 artists, Petra Burmacher and Sean Gallero. They're both light artists. So what that means is they work extensively with color, but through projected light, something you'd be familiar with.
I would love it, yeah,
with,
lighting shows.
Experience in the
sure.
in theater. So they do large-scale installations. Some of our viewers may know their work from a piece they did at the Bean in Chicago, where they projected lights on all the squares around the Bean. They've done pieces at Franklin Wright's Falling Water, and on top of Marina Tower. So they're always doing these large-scale, high-profile pieces.
Public art sort of things, yeah.
So it's always been very immersive, amazing, and beautiful. But what the work this year that they've been working on also has more of a social awareness. So they just finished a piece that was featured in Expo Chicago, and also it was part of the Chicago Architectural Biennial called White Wanderer. And what they did is they worked with geologists in Antarctica, and they measured the sound of the giant ice shelf that's breaking off currently in Antarctica. And they translated that to sound. And then along the Chicago River at one Riverside Place, they projected that sound throughout the city. And on the building, they had a large image replica of that crack. And the sound sounded like a large whale or something in distress, but it really brought the severity of what's happening in Antarctica right down to Chicago. That piece was paired with a piece at Expo and Chicago Architectural Biennial, which they took a number of pieces of mirror, laid them out, and then light from the galleries projected on it, shooting shards all over the wall, again to replicate the breaking up of the ice. So in that line, Color Code comes to the Cleve Carney Art Gallery, and they were really aware of, we are in this moment where it seems like there's so much change going on, and kind of older rules of dialogue or kind of even civility seem to have maybe changed.
Right.
And they were thinking, well, what's a way to get back to a communication that everyone understands? So being artists that work strongly with color, they know that color is something that everyone reacts to. There's universal reaction to see a bright red, it's kind of a warning, blue is cooling. And then they were also thinking about Morse code. So one of the first universal messages understood by people around the world was SOS in Morse code, because they had to come up with a message that everyone understood when they were on the seas. So what they're doing in the gallery is the entire 66-foot by 13-foot high wall in the back of the gallery, they're painting a giant mural that has, in large colorful squares, the Morse code for SOS.
Okay.
And then in the back of the gallery,
so they're painting this on the wall?
On the wall. It'll be floor to ceiling. It's going to be quite dramatic. But to add to it, the lights will be off, normal lights will be off in the gallery, and it'll only be lit by a bank of LED theater lights, which will slowly shift. And as the LED lights shift, it'll change the color of the space, and the color of the mural will actually change before your eyes. And the idea is, at this moment, they're putting out this call that
SOS.
is universal, not so much as like, we need help or things are wrong, but just to pay attention. Things are changing. We need to get back on the same page with everyone and communicate in the same way, because regardless of what you feel the causes may be, or regardless of your political background, it is a moment of change, and we need to start having a dialogue and a conversation about it. So it's going to be an amazing, immersive, aesthetic experience, but it also, I think, has a very relevant message for this time.
Well, you know, I feel like right now with the fires that we've had, a million square miles of fires, we've had hurricanes that have been, you know, just so catastrophic, the earthquakes in Mexico. It is an SOS time on a myriad of levels. And you can say it's global warming, so SOS, pay attention. Or you could say, we're just having a natural disaster right now, like every week there's something happening. And I do think that there is this apprehension of we need to pay attention and support each other. And you see a lot of humanitarian efforts to bring people together, and I think people are reaching out for something to connect.
Yeah, I think most people want to move beyond the argument about what's going on and get to a point where we're addressing it. And I think that this piece really points to that. And it is true. I mean, especially living in the Chicago area, the events currently in Puerto Rico and Mexico definitely hit home. We all know people. And on top of everything else happening in the world, I think it's a great moment for this piece. And it also makes me think about another great asset that we have here at COD in our permanent collection. People love to, when they come to the MAC, see our Toulouse-Lautrec's or our Warhols or our Rembrandt etchings. But what they love about that is there's so much of the moment of that history in those pieces. And what's great about the Cleve Carney Gallery as a contemporary space is that those pieces are about the moment too, but the moment is this moment. So people going to the space are not just learning about history, it allows them a chance to reflect on the moment that they're also partaking in. So just as the pieces we have in the MAC, which are phenomenal, give us a connection with history, pieces like Luftwerk Color Code really put us in the moment of, you know, where we are in history. So.
Well, this was an exciting pick for you to choose this artist, and what great timing is he's, you know, just becoming such a
They're getting a lot
ticket.
of attention. Yeah. It's really going to be a big show. As you mentioned, it was listed as one of the top shows for fall, not for DuPage County, but for Chicago.
Right.
So it's like Art Institute, MCA.
That's right. Look at you. And College of DuPage.
But that goes in with a long history.
And that's a credit to you. And we are so lucky that we have you here guiding our gallery and bringing us some of the best artists in the city and in the country. So thank you
very much.
Thanks for coming on the show today to tell us about it.
My pleasure.
Luftwerk's Color Code will be on display in the Cleve Carney Art Gallery through November 18th. Be sure to stop by when the gallery is open Monday through Thursday from 11 to 7, Saturday from 11 to 3, or it's open prior to all of our Mackinac Art Center shows for 1 hour before the show. So when you come early to the show, come take a stroll through the gallery. For more information on Color Code or other upcoming events at the Cleve Carney Art Gallery, please visit clevecarneyartgallery.org. November promises a number of MAC events you do not want to miss. Join College Dance on Friday, November 3rd at 7:30 p.m. for the annual Fall Dance Fusion Show, where students showcase their imaginative choreography and incredible dance talent. Then, on Thursday, November 9th, celebrity chef Lydia Bastianich comes to the MAC for an intimate conversation covering her journey from Italy to America, with behind-the-scenes stories from her PBS TV show Lydia's Italy and details about her new cookbook. Lone Star will be at the MAC on Saturday, November 10th. Don't miss a night of full hits from these platinum-selling country music giants. Next up in the National Theater Live series is Amadeus. Lucian Masmati of Game of Thrones fame stars as an emotionally tortured Antonio Salieri, grappling with a life lived in the shadows of his world-famous peer Amadeus Mozart. Screenings will be on November 11th at 2 p.m. and November 16th at 7 p.m. Broadway's next hit musical is a comedic revue where master improvisers gather up made-up hit song suggestions from the audience and create a spontaneous evening of music, humor, and laughter. Come and witness this hilarious, one-of-a-kind performance on November 17th at 7:30 p.m. World-famous tap dancer and choreographer Savion Glover will present a decade-spanning personal tribute to dance greats and the forefathers of tap on Sunday, November 26th at 4 p.m. Be sure to come witness this incredible artist in the Midwest premiere of All Funked Up. Last but not least, we have Connie Canaday Howard here to tell you about 2 exciting shows coming to College Theater this fall. Welcome back to the show, Connie.
Thank you.
So I'm really excited about the show that's just about to open, These Shining Lives. Tell everybody about this show.
It's a wonderful piece being directed by Michael Ryzak, who's one of our adjunct professors, and it is a piece based on historical fact of the Radium Girls. What they've become known as is the Radium Girls from Ottawa. So it's based on fact, but then it's fictionalized, so it's a historical nonfiction. So it weaves in and out from fact and fiction, and sort of becomes almost a state of mind and using your imagination. So the settings are really minimal, and it focuses really on the strong bond of friendship and marriage, is really where it focuses, and the heroic efforts that these women did when they were so ill prior to passing away.
So for people who don't know, it's about the girls who used to paint the faces on the watches,
Right.
and they would lick the
Right.
point of the brush and mark the numbers, and they did not realize they were poisoning themselves.
Right, because radium at the time was considered sort of to be a cure-all, and the luminosity of the radium, they sort of celebrated the glow that they had on their hands, and it would get in their hair. It was powder, because it was in the paint. So they'd lick the brush to make the brush a point, and then dip it in water, and then dip it in the paint, and then again. So they were ingesting radium. And radium, was being sold as a tonic. It was supposed to be a cure-all, when actually it was resting in your bones and creating cancers. So, and of course it didn't happen right away. It happened very gradually. The company, though, it came to light in the trial that the company knew they were doing this. The girls were tested by the company doctors, but they were never told the results. And so it was finally when someone got sick and wasn't able to do their job, the company had to let them go. And so when the women that this play focuses on, there's 4 of them, got let go, then they decided, not immediately, it took a little bit of time, but they decided to seek a doctor in Chicago. And he told them the truth, that they were terminal. And then they sort of decided, okay, we're going to make the most out of the days we had left. And they got more and more uncomfortable with not saying anything. And knowing that it was happening to other people.
Right.
And so they sought out, many lawyers wouldn't take the case. And so they finally sought out a lawyer who stayed with them through all of the appeals, because it was appealed all the way up to the Supreme Court. And that settlement, I believe it was 1936, although I'm not the director, but I think it was 1936, established really the statutes for industrial poisoning in Illinois today.
So it's historical, it's emotional, it's a courtroom drama in a way. It's got so many levels.
It's
a
beautiful.
really powerful story.
It's beautiful. I saw
And it's sad, and it's
yes.
hope.
Oh, but it's also.
But they're strong.
It's full of love. I saw a rehearsal just a couple nights ago, and of course they have some time yet, so it's going to grow even more. But it is so full of love and courage. So it really,
to speak out at that time as a woman was not easy.
And they were good all of the historical data. They were good Catholic girls who didn't question authority.
Right.
So it took a lot to stand up. I mean, even ministers and friends in Ottawa, because the radium dial brought in a lot of economy to the area. So people were telling them to be quiet. This was the best thing that ever happened to Ottawa. You must be imagining it. So it took fortitude and fortitude of their families to stand up for them and with them. Catherine, who is, it focuses on all 4 women, but Catherine's probably the central one because she was the most sick. So she was the one that was sick the earliest. So most of the trial was cross-examining her. And I mean, in the last, she was 61 pounds when she died.
Wow.
So.
All right, let's talk about the next show that
Okay.
you're doing. Captain Blood,
Yes.
whole new mood.
Right. Captain Blood, about as diametrically different as you can
It
go.
is very different.
So, except that somebody is wronged, and as these women were wronged.
But this is a swashbuckling
Right.
pirates and
Right.
love and
Right.
romance and the
Right.
whole.
Now, it also is based somewhat on historical figures. So Blood is kind of the character of Peter Blood, who is the protagonist, the central figure, had had a varied life, had multiple nationalities that he was a citizen of because of his parents, and he had chosen to settle in England, and he trained to be a doctor, but he'd also been a sailor and was a sailor in the French Navy and then a private sailor. So he'd settled in England, and then a revolt broke out against the king, the Monmouth Rebellion, and someone was hurt and brought to him to care for. He'd stayed out of it. He wasn't taking sides. And so he was caring for the rebel, and troops came in and arrested him. And he said, I was caring for an injured man. That's my Hippocratic oath. And he was tried for treason and sentenced to death, actually, but imprisoned in Barbados. It was converted to slavery, and so he goes to Barbados and actually works as a doctor. So he has a slightly better stance than most of the slaves who are working on the plantations, and falls in love with a woman of the colonel who oversees the prison, who's a mean, horrible man, and this is a person who has been wronged and still tries to stay noble and honorable even in slavery. And they escape slavery, but they can't really find a home because they're criminals. So he takes to privateering, which is not piracy, but privateers attacked enemies of hostile nations, and then, lived off of that bounty.
So it's an adventure.
Yes, and a love story. The 2 themes, I think, are really about standing up in the face of odds, insurmountable odds, to do what's right, and ultimately it will come around because you are right, and sort of soulmates finding one another even in the most extreme circumstances.
You have your hands full. Oh my gosh. That's a lot going on.
Yeah, it is.
Well, we look forward to seeing that show. Thank you so much for coming to
Yes.
tell everybody about these
Yes.
shows. Thank you for coming on the show. Captain Blood will have performances Thursdays, Saturdays at 8 p.m., Thursdays through Saturdays at 8 p.m., and Sundays at 3 p.m., starting on November 9th and running through November 19th. For tickets, visit the box office or call 630-942-4000. Tickets can also be purchased online at atthemac.org. That's all the time we have for today, but be sure to tune in next month for our next episode, where you can get even more behind-the-scenes details about the upcoming shows at the MAC. I'm Diana Martinez, and thank you so much for watching. We look forward to seeing you at the theater and next time on Backstage Buzz.